Hello and welcome to, I think, episode 37 of Cybeats Powerhouse Perspectives. With me today is the great Marc Sachs. Marc, how are you?
Hey, Chris, doing great. Down here in Alabama where the sun shines and the tornadoes spin, even in January. So,
I was going to ask. So, you're home in
yep.
Alabama. Is the Enigma machine in the room
The,
with
En-
you?
the Enigma is not in this office. Over my shoulder, you can see let me get my finger correct, a Fialka. That's from Soviet Union, and a NEMA. This is from Switzerland. The Enigma is that way out the door in a special case that has a lock around it. So it won't grow legs, if you know what I mean.
Well, my mom was born in Alabama. I got a lot of family there. That's a whole other topic. So, I'll have
Yep.
to stop by and,
Sweet home Alabama, as they say.
right. And, if I go out this way, there's dolphins, a different story.
There you go.
So, as we're discussing in the green room before this, right? So in this, we try to capture our conversation with people like yourself, like Tim Roxy and this long list, Win Schwartau and everybody else. We've been down these weird paths. And right now, the stuff we've been working on for the last couple decades has gotten really, really important. The cyber stuff. One thing for, if anybody, I didn't know this, I should have known. I feel like a bad friend. US CERT was Mark's idea. That was established, right. He was working in the National Security Council in the White House after coming from a long military career. And we're building things as we go, right, in classic Yankee format. And what was simple and not that big a deal and so forth 30 years ago and 40 years ago has suddenly gotten critical, literally critical for infrastructure and keeping the bloody lights on and nation state conflict and everything else. So with your background, looking back, right, and if Anthony, you could throw that first question up there, as we were discussing, right, in this context, in these conversations, we're looking at transparency, clarity, how easy it is to figure things out, because so much of that is based on our domain now on cyber. So looking back to the beginning of your work in the Army, it is in an engineering unit, if I'm not mistaken, to the present, through that entire path. Has it gotten better or worse? Was it easier back then to know what's going on? And how's that worked?
Yeah, so there were things that were easier. A lot of it's because we didn't know what we didn't know. It's the great case of the unknown unknowns, and so we were dumb and stupid and happy because we frankly just didn't know what was going on. If we go back, just play calendar with me here and go all the way back to the last century, so back to the 1990s, right? In those days, serious computer security stuff, those that were learned and above all the others was done behind green doors. That's NSA, that's DoD, Rand Corporation. This is not new. It's been thought of since World War II and before. We're talking about those crypto devices. Obviously the Germans, the Allies, others were thinking about security of information. How do I talk between Alice and Bob without somebody intercepting the message? So this is not new stuff. We've got new toys, new technology, but the ideas are the same. But in the 1990s, a bit of openness happened. If you remember the cryptography, like PKI for email, as email came of age, certs and certificates started to come out, public-private key pairs, and even things like Phil Zimmerman's encryption for your email, PGP, that was owned by nobody, just owned by yourself. These were huge, eye-opening things because up to that point, anything, true security, I put quotes around true, was all government and not available to the general public. So as more of us that were not in that community became aware of the tools and the techniques and things, a whole new culture grew. And of course, that's where DEF CON came from, ultimately Black Hat, many of the other gatherings, the social meetups and things. But again, through the lens of the 1990s, I think, yeah, we probably knew more given what we had access to. We certainly knew more. And there was a lot more sharing, a lot more openness. People wanted to collaborate. They wanted to learn. In the military, we didn't have a lot of strong rules then. If you were a system administrator and you wanted to just kind of mess around a little bit with your networks, you were free to do that. And if you wanted to sniff the networks and see what was going on, do deep packet analysis, even if you wanted, in the old Unix world, before everything was encrypted, if you had a problem, you couldn't figure it out, you could always, call for help and then sniff the root password because help would generally log in remotely. They do an R login, you sniff the password, and then from then on, you could just log in yourself. And there were no rules against that. That was just kind of tradecraft of the time. And so in the past couple of century or couple of decades, the 2000s and the 2010s, and now that we're into the 2020s, at least in the military, is probably so also private sector, that freedom and openness certainly is not there. I can't take a young system administrator in the Air Force and say, "Hey, turn on your sniffer and sniff some passwords," and then just log in, using root or admin. That gets the kid fired. So, we may think of the 1990s as almost being like the barnstorming era for computer security. All of us, we cut our teeth back then. And again, we didn't know what we didn't know. And we're just running into walls we didn't know existed. We'd find ourselves on the other side of the wall, couldn't figure out how to get back. We build our own path. Some of this is documented. A lot of it is not, which is unfortunate. We don't have a good written history of the path we've been down. We got a lot of storytelling that goes on. I know Jason Healy and some others have tried to capture some of the history of military cyber conflict, and stating that life didn't start with the creation of Cyber Command. There certainly were decades of work that happened before then. So, right to your question, did we know more then? Given what we could know, if you take a percentage of what we could know, how much of it did we know? Yeah, I'd say a fairly good amount. But since then, there's a lot of knowledge has been created, and it's not very well shared. And so, yeah, of the sum total, we probably individually know a whole lot less than we would have known back in the 1990s or so.
Well, and that has me thinking along that path as well. You remember, describing cyber risk to people early in the day, right? We get a lot of, why would anybody do that? Because most of the information, to your point, most of the information everybody got, they trusted and they used.
Yep.
Because not only is 1990, the 1900s, not looking back too far, we talked Mesopotamia a fair bit on this, in these, because I think it's, you want to look at, Peter the Great and the amount of information conveyed by what you're wearing in court and so forth, move nations, right?
Right.
And so we have, and now, we all know we're in this misinformation, disinformation age, right? Because to your point, it's harder, you can't just see everything, as like you're saying, it brings back a lot of memories. Not that I did anything like that, but
Yeah.
you can see, I can see all the bloody traffic, right? Like, why not just use it for good? But you don't have that. And you do have benefits from the benefit
Right.
of poisoning the well has always been there. The trickster and so forth has always been a fixture of society. But now you have nation state benefit. If you put billions of dollars into poisoning the well and working on misinformation and disinformation and whatnot to the point that you can't, nobody, reasonable people, can't trust any information, then, Anthony, that current question, if you would, then you get, I'm sort of answering my question myself, but how cloudy is the sky today?
Yeah.
Right. And, and to lead into where I think this is going, we're cybersecurity folks. I think that a lot of things that are going on that have been evolving for a couple decades now in threat intelligence, they're happening now in supply chain intelligence. Turn this. I think we can actually increase trust. Maybe
Yeah.
hard to decrease it anymore at this point. But
Well, there was an interesting paper written in the mid 90s. I don't remember the title or the author. I'd have to do some research to find it. But the, the gist of it was that at that point, we had more or less figured out how to hack things at a physical level, how to tap wires and things like that. And so the state of the art in the 1990s, maybe even for a couple more decades, was about at the code level. Can I do a buffer overflow? Format string attack, things like that, going after the syntax of the programming and programming errors. But in the paper, they recognize that someday that will also go away. We will have figured out how to write correct code. We will engineer out all these code vulnerabilities. But yet the attack community, they're not going to give up. So you literally just move up the stack. We're down, originally they were down in the layer 1 area, physical. They've moved their way up. They'll hit layer 8, that fictitious layer that's above 7, which is the human mind, the carbon layer. And that's what we're seeing today. Rather than trying to go after software vulnerabilities, you go after human mind vulnerabilities. And how do you patch the human mind? So if you say how cloudy is the sky, the sky is as cloudy as 8 billion minds, of which what, 6.5 billion of them are connected on the internet. That's a lot of particles of cloud. And so any
Well, you
one of them
remember,
can generate a lightning bolt, or any one of them can be pretty and blue. So yeah.
well, you remember the Good Times virus, the early 90s, when I was sort of new to all this. And, anybody listening, you look it up, but it was basically an email that said, tell all your friends there's a bad virus called, Good Times.
Oh, good
And
times.
people
Yeah.
forwarding that email brought down the internet effectively,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And at
Well,
the
you remember
time,
"I Love You," right?
yes.
That was the classic one, right? So
Well, at the time I argued, I got slapped down by the people who knew a lot at the time, but I said, this isn't a scam. It is a virus. It is the first wetware virus. It goes in your optic
right.
nerve, makes your brain move your fingers and forward itself, right? So now we're just, got into a
Yeah,
level
we
of
see that
sophistication.
on Facebook and other social medias. Hold your index finger down until it pops up, and then hit copy, and then find on Facebook where it says, "What are you doing?" and paste it, and this will reset the system. How many of
Yes. No, it
those do you
won't.
get each
No.
day?
Yes.
From
Oh, it
friends
worked. Yes.
that you thought would know better.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But
But that's
it
what we're
can't.
talking about. That's that hacking of the human mind, which it's nothing new. I mean, we've talked about this for decades. But I think the takeaway is that the attack community, the criminal community, those who really do want to take advantage of us, have recognized that the days are numbered when it comes to a vector being through software vulnerabilities. And maybe there's something left in configuration vulnerabilities and patch management. But the wide open green field is all about believability in the human mind. And there's a lot of room there to grow. And as you can see, a lot of growth is happening.
Well, there's a lot of, and looking forward, Anthony, we want to put up that the last question. This is where, this is where, across the ideological and political spectrum, I tend to agree with, because there's root issues here. And what we're really debating about is truth versus dishonesty. This is democracy. This is open source. This is free speech. The whole idea isn't that it's, good and makes unicorns happy, is that it works better. It outcompetes, closed systems, corruption, authoritarianism, and so forth. And, we've talked about the motivations to break these things and motivations for disinformation. There's really strong motivations to come up with solutions that solve this, because at the end of those solutions are profits, or billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, is economic activity. It's individuals having better, stabler lives, and being less hungry, and corporations meeting their goals, and so forth. So, but I am admittedly, Pollyanna on this. I think the future is rosy. I think I'm right, but I could be off by 300 years, right? Do you think we're at that point? Are we curving up in some direction?
The future is absolutely rosy. I think for those people who believe that the future is bad, they've been watching too many sci-fi movies.
Right. That's not
I mean,
futurism.
each year, if you got to be honest here. Look back last year, the year before, the decade before. Are we better off now than we were last year, 10 years ago? I mean, there may be some ups and downs in everybody's lives, but I don't think there's anybody out there that can collectively say that humankind is worse off now than we were, say, 10 years ago. I don't know where that mindset comes from. And so why would you think we'd be worse off 10 years from now? It's your own damn fault if you're not, part of the good vibes, movement. There's so much good out there, and I'm afraid a lot of people, they get twisted up, and social media does this. It amplifies a lie far more than it'll amplify the truth, because people just want to believe the conspiracy things, and so it's easy to get wrapped up into this and to not unhook your brain, from almost like a cocaine experience online. You just want to believe it. And before you know it, you're in this little tornado of doubt and disbelief and conspiracy theories. And if you can stick your head up above the noise and just look at the real world around you, you can see, that's a bunch of BS. And I'm being deceived. And I'm afraid some of it is probably maliciously intended. Just back kind of to your thing about passing around that joke back in the 90s. Somebody out there is getting their jollies, starting up these rumors, and either because they get paid to do it, they get more clicks and more views, or whatever the motivation is. But I think as a society, we've got to recognize that this influence that's there, that's being brought to us by being highly connected, there's a time when you just need to turn it off. and
Yes.
enjoy the world around you. And you can go back to the synthetic world later if you need it, but go smell the roses, as
Well,
they used to say, right?
well, yeah, and end this conversation on a technical, hopeful note, right?
Yeah,
Because I look at what we're doing in cybersecurity, and I see applications to exactly this.
yeah,
I think that you can in social media with all its with its bad pedigree, we can attach things that I don't really know that that's a mangrove right there, but it continues to prove that it's a mangrove, and it probably is good enough,
yeah,
right? I think we
yeah.
can bring good enough through the stuff that's going on, particularly in supply chain security, right? You
Right.
think you and I, you with US CERT, we with my, the ICS ISAC, and all this other threat intelligence stuff, SIMS and everything else. It's it's a matter of scale. Supply chain just
Mhm.
sort of puts it in focus.
That's
What's in
right.
your supply chain intelligence? Everything. If we can build that system, and we have to, then I think that gives us a lot of hope for the rest.
You're hitting on something there. Anything we want to do, we can do. That I think
Everything
that's
is figure outable. Yes.
everything is right. And the other, there's like an axiom to this. If a human mind can think of it, if you can imagine it, it can be done. So if we believe that there is a secure future, it can be done. It's not impossible. We can do it. If we can believe that there's a future where everybody's truthful and we'll never get rid of
You can
everything.
tell how truthful people are as well as you can in person.
Yeah.
That
But if you can
works.
imagine it, we can build it. It's all this whole synthetic world, as you know, is all man-made. It's not natural. And if human minds built it, human minds can alter it. We can make it better. Or we can just, spiral down to this world of it. Nobody can improve it. It's the big machine. No, it's corporatism or it's governmentalism, whatever, side of the coin you want to fall on. That's
Right.
horse crap. Of
Right.
course, it's changeable.
Right. We
We just
built
have to
it.
decide what do we want it to be, and then let's start moving that direction. It's all
Right.
doable.
Well,
Absolutely doable.
this is where I come with the 300 years. I think that's inevitable because
Yeah,
people want that more than they don't. So the
right,
question is, are we going to let our descendants do it and miss it ourselves, or build it ourselves? And they say the next 30 years, right?
right. Well, the thing that's been fun to watch, 40 years ago, let's go back to what would that be? 1983. So January of
Right.
83. Okay. No iPhone, no iPad, no Android, none of that stuff, right? But the home computer, if you had a Commodore 64 or the new IBM PC had just come out, I mean, you're thinking, what
I had
else could
Apple
they
IIc.
possibly invent?
Yeah.
We're at the peak of technological. Obviously, look at what's happened since. And so, we're sitting here today. Wow, there's nothing else we could. We're good. We're done. We've got we've got 3D printing. We got all this cool stuff that's out there. Yeah, horse hockey. You
Right.
know, horse hockey. That ain't nothing compared to what we're going to have. And of course, our future, we can shape it. We don't like where it's going. Well, doggone it, change it, make it better. And I would admonish anybody who's listening. If you don't like the world around you, well, go forth and change it. Do not accept the way it is. Back to like the ICS CERT, US CERT. We were talking about this earlier. They did not exist. It took somebody to say, wow, that's not there. Let's make it happen. And all the listeners and watchers need to think about that. What around you does not exist, roll your sleeves up and make it exist. You can do it. It's may not be easy, but it is doable. If you can imagine it, it can be done.
I can't end on a better note than that. Mark, fantastic seeing you. Thanks for your
Chris,
time. Thanks
always
for everything
good.
you've done.
Always fun. Yep. Thank you.
Bye, folks.